Hi everyone. So today we are gonna solve the first question from Striver's SD sheet, and I am gonna make a complete series from this SD sheet because the only goal is to me being better, the best in mock interviews, and I do not have anybody here who I can explain. The best thing I can do here is just explain it here and upload it in my YouTube videos. I think that's one way keeps me motivated. So let's go with the first question, that is the set matrix zeros. So the question says that set matrix zeros. So something with matrix where we have to set the matrix to zeros, right? Most of the time, if you just read the headline of the questions, you can understand like what you have to do in the given question. So we are given an m into n integer matrix, and if an element is found zero, so we have to mark the entire row and entire column to be zero. It's a very simple question. So basically, the basic question of array, it says that if we are given an integer matrix m into n, and if the element is 0, if you are found any element in the matrix to be 0, that particular row and that column of zeros to be done completely 0. Here we have 0, so the change the entire row and the entire column to be 0. Here if you see, this entire column and in this entire row should be converted into zeros, and again here this entire row and this entire column to be turned into zeros, right? That's what we have done. So the first thought what it comes, like we can just store the zero wherever, like the position of the matrix, right? That is the row and column position, and then we can store where the zeros are found, and then right, we can store the zero position somewhere. Wherever we have found any zero, we can store it. After that, what we can do, we just can again iterate, right? First, what's the thought process that's coming to our mind? At first, what simple thing, we just have to find the zeros. Okay, so let's take an ordered map, or just taking some map to store the zeroth position, and then we can store the position of the zero, right? That's one thought. And after we get the position of the zero, what do we have to do? You have to just convert that entire column and entire row to be zero. It's a very simple brute force type of approach that comes to your mind after you see this question, right? So let's go with the brute force, no worries. So this is basically the brute force having a time complexity of big O of 3 or big O of 3 and into m, definitely. So this is the way we take matrix for row and column. And after that, I have taken unordered map. It's better than map, definitely, where I have taken in for bool row and for column. For row and column, I have taken to unordered map, which will store the 0. So I have basically I'm iterating here using the two for loops, and I'm checking in the matrix. If it's 0, just turn that complete row column to be true, okay, and row also to be true, right? That's the thing what I have done here, right? And now again, what I have done, since I have gone inside the matrix, and I have checked if anything is found to be 0, then turn the entire row and column to be true, or 1, right? It will be 1 1 1 1. And then now again I will be iterating in the row now and check for the row. If it is the first, that is, if it is this one, if it is true, right, then what we are gonna do, we are gonna change it to 0, right? And again, if that, for the same, for again iterating in the column and checking if the matrix have 1, like true, if it is found true, right, then what we are gonna do, then we have to turn that entire column to 0, as simple as that, right? But you can see the space complexity here is very much, It's very much. And one thing you didn't notice, it will be big of 2. ठीक है. And then plus you can do big of n m m separately, you can write that as well, right? But it is big of 2. And then, but here the space complexity isn't good, right? Time complexity will be same because you have to iterate in the matrix, right? So for going in the matrix, every time we have to check for row and column, so time complexity will be same. Let's work something like on the complexity at first, right? Why to use some extra space for storing the zero, or to check whether it's a zero or not, right? So we can remove the space, right? Why we Another thing, the brute force, this is the brute force that we have done, right? Now you think, I'll give you a thought. See here. Okay, just see here. You can just see here also. If we see here in this first example, this is a zero. Okay, what we have done, just forget that we will take some extra space to store that. Why we are not just checking at first only? At first hand we can check whether it's a zero or not. If it's a zero, then we can mark this, right? The first column, first row to be zero, and again mark this also, right? The first column to be zero, right? Again check, just mark them. What I mean to say is that, just take a notepad. Suppose 1 1 0 1 0 1 0 0 1 0, right? So what we can do, I'm just saying that let's take this to help. Let's take the help of first column and first row to mark the point. We have found a zero here. So rather than storing it somewhere else, we can just mark it here also now. Just take this, mark this as zero, because after all this is also gonna turn as zero. And just mark the column as zero, right? Corresponding row as zero. Again for this one, let's mark these as zero, right? And what is the corresponding row? This also is zero. For similarly this, again this, let's mark this, it's having a row, right? This to be zero. Again for this, already it's zero, right? So this is already zero, right? The corresponding row is also zero, the corresponding column is also zero. That's what I'm asking. Let's take the first row and first column for marking. Now you can see, after doing the marking in the first column and first row, we can just go in here, in between, in middle, and check. Sorry, let's now iterate in the first. All of them are 0 0. So right now we have to just check if this is also 0. Just mark the entire column to be 0, so this will also be turned as 0, right? So the whole matrix have turned to 0, the final thing. This is not a good example, but yeah, another example if I give you, I'm just asking to take a help of first row and the first column. If any row is a 0 is present, just mark that row and just column to be 0, right? That way I think it can have a solution. Okay, and now again, but there will be a problem, if you have noticed that or not. This particular column row is gonna have this is common for both row and column, right? Since we are taking this two as guard column or guard row, you can say, we are gonna check on this too. We're gonna mark based on the zeros here. So this will be common, right? So what if this is also 0? Okay, if this is also 0, if this is, suppose I'll just show you an example how what I'm saying. This is 0, this is 1, this is 1. Okay, and this is also 0, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. So here what it will say, okay, so this is 0, so mark this is also as 0. Yeah, this will mark as 0. It's already 0. And after this marking is done, we will come on this and check. So since this is also 0, we will mark this entire row as 0, and then mark entire column as 0. So this is also 0, we will mark this as 0, right? But mark this as 0, right? But here if you see, this 0 was actually 0 from previously. So this entire one, this down one have to also be 0, right? But that's not happening. So we will take a like marker, something like C, which will take the, we can take some variable, right? Which can keep track of this particular 0 here, right? Because these also want the entire column to change to 0, right? So we will take some help of a variable C and keep track. Here I'll show you how I will. Because so that it can remember that in the starting, hey, I'm also 0 man. So turn this entire column to be 0. I am a guard and check, but sometimes I also want to be 0. So at that time you should turn the other rest of the columns also 0, right? Since I am common, so just taking a variable to make it uncommon so that it can remember what was it in the previous. So I have another submission here, I guess this one. Okay, so this is basically the most optimal approach, having a space complexity of big of constant space complexity and a time complexity of big of n square. So again these two initialized in the row and the column, and then I have taken the C1. Okay, this is basically the counter. At first it will be 1 only until unless it come as 0. At first it will be 1, and then I am going in the matrix and checking. If anything is found 0 in the matrix, then mark that row as 0, right? And if the column is not marked as 0, then mark that column as 0. I'm just marking the first row and the first column. Just initialize, like the first thing what I'm doing is just marking the first row and first column here. Okay, but what if this was also 0? Suppose if j is not is equals to 0, okay, then of course I will definitely mark it as 0. But what if this was also 0 from beforehand? If this column was also 0, then if j is also 0, then mark c is equals to 0. Then mark this is also 0. And at the end, so this column also wants to be 0 completely, this orange portion. If that column c is equals to 0, if c is equals to 0, then mark that particular column also to be 0, right? And so I have marked both the row and column guard as 0, 0. So now a very simple thing, I'll just go across the matrix and check. If the row is 0 or if the column is 0, then mark the entire column and row as 0. And this is having a time complexity, space complexity is constant, and the time complexity here is big of n. So this is the solution. I hope you enjoyed, and yeah, this is the first solution. I hope I'll be improving. I think you should give the feedbacks there in the comment section. And yeah, keep coding, keep lead coding, and keep grinding. And yeah, like Merry Christmas in advance. Have cake, and yeah, wish you all the very best. Bye.